the judge. Dredd may be the law, but I am the judge. And today, instead of video games, we're going to have a look at some fan films that have been made. Starting with one of the best ones. This is called Judge Minty. It came out in 2013. It was actually a project that had been worked on for about 5 years. And it was with the release of the latest film, it finally got enough funding and completed its production so that they could release it. It went around to various conventions. It showed the great appeal that the Dredd universe has for a lot of fans. So it's actually available now. You can watch it on their website. You can watch it on YouTube. It's a really good fan film. I figure it deserves its own mention. So we're not talking about Dredd. He does appear, don't worry. But we're actually going to talk about Judge Minty. Let's have a look. Now, Judge Minty is actually an original 1980 storyline from John Wagner, and in it, it's the first time we ever see a judge go out on what has become the long walk, and that is seen in this film, but we'll get to that part. We start off with a typical scene on the streets of Mega City 1 where a bunch of perps are causing some trouble. And it starts with an excellent opening. I mean, look at that. Mega City 1 in glorious display. Really nice CGI effects here. I gotta hand it to the filmmakers. Again, it's a fan film. It's a low-budget production. To heck with a Stallone film, look what these guys managed to do on a fraction of the budget. This is Judge Minty himself, Bill. And the other nice thing that I really like about how they've done this, the Lawmaster. Yes, they finally managed to make the motorcycle that all of us street judges use to get around Mega City 1 to look properly the way it was in the comic book. Now, that's another nice thing about this Judge Minty film. A lot of the other productions that you've seen, both in movies and video games, they've had to kind of tone down a lot of what is in the comic book because it's very hard to pull it off in real life. This film, what they did is made the Lawmaster kind of a trick of CGI special effects. So you actually have a Lawmaster that properly looks like it does from the comic book. Same with their outfit. Same with a lot of the other stuff that we're going to see. Really great. They get a commendation from me for that. Anyway, let's get back to the film. So, Bill Minty, this is from the original story. He discovers that he's getting a little bit old for being a street judge, and with that comes a bit of weakness. First of all, he's taking the helmet off. That's the first step that he did wrong. But not only that, he's starting to find that he's beginning to get a crisis of personality. He's starting to feel like maybe if we give people a chance, if we look for the good in them, they won't be so bad. And he calls upon good old Joe Dredd to help him out of his particular wounds that he's got right now. The whole opening is really fantastic. Really love how they've done that. Can't say I'm the biggest fan of the actor who's playing Dredd. He's been done better in other productions, but he's not the star of the film, so it's okay. We'll let it slide.
When you get old, you start getting strange notions. Like maybe people aren't so bad. Maybe if we treat them with kindness, the good in them will come out.
It's a noble philosophy, Judge Minty. And through this film, I won't give away the ending, but there's a nice exploration of that as a theme. It's actually kind of refreshing. It's a unique take on the world of the street judges.
I've been on the streets too long, Joe. There's only one way for me.
Judge William Minty.
Now, when I did the Stallone film, I mentioned that this is a great image of what the Long Walk must have looked like. There is actually a frame from the original 1980 comic about Judge Minty, the John Wagner story. It exactly has this pose. It has these judges doing their lawgiver stance. So, kudos to them for recreating it again. The one thing that's a little bit misleading here, in the comic book, Judge Minty was the first to go on the Long Walk. This almost establishes, oh yeah, we've done this all the time. Every couple of weeks, somebody's off to do the Long Walk. Especially since later on, when Judge Minty goes out into the cursed earth, he finds that there have been other judges out there. He sees helmets strewn about some of the wasteland. Unfortunately, that's the last we're going to see of actual Minty City 1. It only appears for about 7 minutes in the film. Minty, why are you taking your helmet off? Ugh. Anyway, that's a side note. Yeah, so the rest of the film takes place in the Cursed Earth, and they actually do a pretty decent job of depicting it. There's a lot of nice kind of filter effects that they use to make it look a lot more harsh than where it was probably originally filmed. Minty encounters a group of these freaky mutant folks from out on the wasteland area, and they're relatively well done, great costumes, nicely acted. Admittedly, this is the part of the film that starts to fall apart for me. It's not bad, but Edmund Dean, the actor who played Judge Minty, he's very good in the first half of the film, spot on, excellent. But there's some sequences at this point onward. He's doing a very stoic, out in the wasteland, soldier against the masses kind of a role, and his use of the lawgiver is excellent. They really use homing shots and grenade shots and all that kind of stuff to really good effect. Kudos on that note.
You're tracking me about 2-3 days. Getting braver.
These are the crazies that are following him, and their leader has this really spooky-looking goalie mask. But the production, I don't know if the director just didn't tell them what they were supposed to do very well, because after about the halfway point, when we reach this sort of dark warehouse area, there's a lot of scenes where Minty's kind of just walking around, and he looks a little lost, like the actor doesn't quite know what to do. So that's a point against him. This is the leader I was talking about. He's not very clear either. There's scenes where it almost appears that he has telekinesis. I guess being a mutant, he would. You see him like grabbing rocks and moving them out of the way. Judge Minty fires a grenade shot at him, and he throws that out of the way with his wave of his hand. It's not clearly specified in the film. In this sequence here, Judge Minty actually goes into this cavernous area, and he's encountering something. He doesn't really specify what it is, but he puts on this cowl you're about to see, and he says something like, oh, that'll keep them at bay. There's no real explanation of what that is. That may be a fact that they've cut down a longer film into just a half an hour, I'm not sure. It doesn't really work very well, though. That's it. Should keep them in their holes for a while if I'm lucky. That may be a reference to the comic book. For the average audience member, though, it's not clear what that means. Now, okay, he's in a cowl, and some of the bad guys are about to attack him. What we have here is the classic Hollywood trope of you think he's in the cowl, and then the bad guys try to kill him and stab him with a knife. And it turns out it was a decoy. It's one of those sort of moments. Now, unfortunately, from this point on, the film I gotta admit, it sort of falls apart. What we've got is basically he goes into a warehouse area I mentioned earlier and encounters this transparent lizard dog thing, which I'm about to show you. It's not very clear why that happened or what exactly is going on. There's a lot of reliance on the audience to put two and two together with this sequence. Lawgiver never misses.
Just a kid.
Now this scene here is halfway or three-quarters of the way through the film, and you're getting the idea that once again he's got a crisis of personality, his own ethics. He's just knocked down this crazy from out in the wasteland, and then he realizes it's actually this young girl. And again, he's having that moment of like, maybe we shouldn't be judging them so quickly, and maybe if we give them kindness instead. It's a nice scene. I like the fact that it's in there. Unfortunately, it's not very well developed, and the main bad guy with the feathery ski mask, he comes back. He comes along, and then he discovers that this girl is dead, and he's outraged. Look at that. But why? I mean, was that his girlfriend? It's not established. It doesn't have any details. It's very weak. And unfortunately, it's about to get weaker.
That's right. Think about it. Is he alone?
We're going to wrap it up pretty soon here. This is the bit I was talking about. These transparent, ghosty lizard dog things. They are a side part of the end of the film that I'm not going to give away, but it's really not well established. It's not clearly explained what they are, what their impact is. What does Judge Minty mean by, go ahead, think about it, is he alone? One can imply that there's a certain intelligence in these creatures, and Judge Minty is thinking, okay, you better make sure, since you know I'm a street judge, is this the only one in the area? Not very well established, not very clear. So what's my final verdict on Judge Minty, the fan film? As a fan film, it's really good. It gets a commendation from me. It has certain problems because it's a fan film. It's only half an hour, so they've had to make certain cuts. And I think a lot of those cuts, it would have been better to leave in. There's story elements that are just not explained. Some of the fight sequences are relying heavily on the editing. The acting, Edmund Dean is really good in the first half. The second half, he's kind of wooden, and he doesn't really have an ending to tell properly. So, again, that's the limitation of what kind of a film we're looking at here. But overall, yeah, it gets a commendation from me, and it's not the first fan film we're going to be watching. So until next time, stay out of trouble.